We're recording this around 8:30 on May 4th, 2021. By the time you hear this, the rest of the league will have finished their games, and we'll be watching the Canucks and Flames battle over what's left of their pride. Welcome to the Battle of Alberta podcast, the hockey show that spent 10 minutes debating an intro and still came up with nothing. I'm Stuart Jones, the Oilers fan, and with me is our resident Flames fan, Darren Plett.
Hi, Stu. I was still trying to think of something up to the last second there, and there was just nothing. I have nothing.
Yep, we're officially out of clever things to say, so that means all that you can look forward to is insightful analyses.
We will just be listing off stats that we looked up and not even giving any context or info about them, just reading numbers off of a page for this entire episode.
Yeah, that pretty much sounds like what I have in my notes.
Yeah, same here. There's a lot of numbers, I'll tell you that.
So speaking of listing off numbers, I guess we'll start with our scorecard.
Oh, perfect. Look at that segue. We don't have a good intro, but we have excellent segues.
Excellent segues. So in the month of April, I believe it was, my goodness, time flies.
Mm-hmm.
In the month of April, we had a full month of hockey, so that was unusual. So I don't know about you, but I forgot to watch hockey after like the 8th of the month because that's usually when it's over.
I didn't forget, but I definitely chose to watch less than I could have, considering who I cheer for.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the Flames. Believe it or not, they actually did okay. They had 500 in the month of April, 6-6 out of their 12 games. We thought they were going to play 14, so our predictions are skewed, but we'll pretend we thought they were going to play 12 because then I was bang on. I said they were going to win 6 games. You said they were going to win 7, so we'll pretend we were pretty darn close there.
Yeah, you can pretend that like they were only ever going to play 12 games, and I can pretend that I predicted exactly 500, which I think is what I did, so we both nailed it.
There you go. That's the real way of putting it. Good job.
Yeah, we both win.
The Oilers, on the other hand, they were supposed to play 13 games. They got in 11 in the month of April. We both thought they were going to win 8 out of 13, which is pretty baller record. They ended up going 7-3-1 out of 11 games. So one could argue an even baller record. That's not a word,
more
but I tried to throw it out there anyways.
Can you imagine how weird it would have sounded, let's say 2 seasons ago, if we'd done predictions and been like, the Oilers were supposed to play 13 games this month, but they got in 11, and that's pretty good. Like, and that's somehow completely normal right now.
Yeah, that's definitely a bizarre thing that just happens this year for some reason. We should state, because we did find out that some people actually do take us as their only source of hockey news.
Yes, we were made aware of that.
Not mentioning any names, but
interesting choice.
Congratulations to that listener.
We can now spread whatever lies and misinformation we desire.
But yes, for the sake of that listener and possibly others, who knows, no judgment, I guess. The Vancouver Canucks were absolutely, decimated, unfortunately, by COVID. Luckily, it doesn't seem to be that there were no, long-term repercussions from that. Everyone seems to have recovered nicely from what we've heard. But obviously that threw a wrench in some of the schedules. So there will be a few extra for fun games at the end of the season, mainly between the Flames and the Canucks. So that'll be interesting.
That explains our opening there, is that the Flames and Canucks actually play 3 or 4 games. They play 4 games against each other, but I think 3 come all after the rest of the league has finished their games. So the rest of the league will actually be sitting around watching the Flames and Canucks play completely meaningless hockey, which is pretty funny.
Actually, there has, been talk speculated that it's even possible, depending on if these games get played or if, there's further delays, that it's possible they'll be playing games like even while the playoffs are happening. So, which would just be demoralizing.
I did hear someone speculate on the radio that potentially they could schedule the Flames and Canucks game for the last one for a morning or afternoon, and then have the playoffs start that evening. Can you imagine that? Like the Flames and Canucks game ends and the Sportsnet panel is like, well, thank goodness we got that over with. Now it's time for actual hockey.
That basically equates to like seeing the minor hockey league team play during the intermission.
It's like a really bad opening band for the band that you actually came to see.
Yeah, or that. So anyways, that's our scorecard for whatever that's worth. I guess we should also mention we talked about a couple of Battle of Alberta games in our last episode, our sort of mid-month check-in. But since then, they had Battle of Alberta at the end of April on the 29th. For some reason, we both thought the Oilers would win, although I guess there is reason for that. I should probably say, for some reason, the Flames actually won that game 3-1.
That's more accurate. Yep.
And then since then, because of our delayed recording schedule, and I'll take blame for that, we actually missed a Battle of Alberta game. There was one scheduled for May 1st, so we didn't have any predictions for it. But the Oilers did win that one 4-1, so we'll just pretend the 29th one didn't happen, and we were right. Let's go with that, shall we?
Yeah, perfect. We can exclude the Flames win from ever happening. That seems well within the realm of reason for me.
So on that note and that sort of somber tone of yours, would you like to talk a little bit about the Flames right now?
Yeah,
completely optional, I guess.
It's not really. The people need to know, Stu. But you talked about the Flames going 500 in our scorecard and saying, well, it's not that bad. The Flames actually went 500. Well, it is bad when you take in the context that they had to do much better than that to get to the playoffs, and there needed to be some level of desperation for them to claw their way into the playoffs. And for a long time, it has been possible for them to get in because Montreal's been playing pretty bad, and that's the team the Flames needed to catch. But in all their desperation and with all their might and with the great Daryl Sutter running the bench, the best the Flames could manage was 500 hockey, winning as many games as they lost. So that's not good enough. As of tonight, technically, the Flames still have a chance. It's not good, though, because they only have 6 games remaining, and any combination of 2 Flames losses or 2 Montreal wins, the Flames are done. So it would only take like a Flames loss and a Montreal win, for example, and the Flames are toast. So essentially they're toast is what I'm saying. They're done for already. And I kind of figured that you could take a quick look back at what happened and then a quick look to the future and then move on to, you know, something happier. If you're an Oilers fan, I'll just get this post-mortem of the Flames out of the way and shove the carcass off to the side. So it's worth remembering that the beginning of the season, we had such high hopes for the Flames. At least I did, and a lot of fans did, because we finally got that elite goaltender we'd been searching for. We got Jacob Markstrom in. We signed him for 6 years. Everything was going to be great. And what we were treated to was some pretty boring hockey under Jeff Ward. Like, the Flames weren't absolutely terrible, but it wasn't fun to watch. And it was just really slow hockey. They didn't score a ton. You know, you could tell that there was a real offensive damper on this team. And, you know, that was the end for Jeff Ward. Once it became clear that the Flames weren't progressing as much as they should have been, Jeff Ward was fired very shortly into his 2-year contract, and Daryl Sutter was hired. And, you know, Daryl Sutter's brought more urgency to the Flames, I think, but it hasn't really brought that much more results, which is why this offseason seems so interesting to me. Because if you think about Daryl Sutter, you think about his style or how he likes his teams to play, and it's heavy and fast and aggressive, and you know, they get it on the forecheck and they're hitting a lot, and you know, you think of like grinding hockey and big bodies. When you think of his LA Stanley Cup champion teams, they were pretty big teams and they were really aggressive, and they didn't necessarily score a lot, but they shut other teams down. And that gets me thinking, because that doesn't really describe this Flames team a lot. They have a good defense. They don't really have the troops to be able to play really big and really aggressive and like a shutdown type of game overall. So I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen to the Flames this offseason, because they're clearly not good enough. And they've committed to Daryl Sutter for 3 more years, assuming they're not going to fire another coach and be paying 3 or 4 coaches at the same time. I don't think that's very likely. So what are they going to do? Are they going to try to tailor this team to a Daryl Sutter type team and try to find bigger players and, get rid of their smaller, more exciting players that might not be able to grind and forecheck and hit as much as Daryl Sutter wants? Or is he going to change his methods a little bit and try to incorporate players like Johnny Gaudreau, who is never going to be a grinder or anything like that? So for me, it's almost kind of a lose-lose scenario, because I don't see Daryl Sutter drastically changing his ways. So I'm kind of wondering if the Flames go in that sort of direction, we're going to get much less exciting hockey, or keep this same brand of kind of boring hockey that we already have. Now, to be clear, I think Daryl Sutter is going to bring wins. Like, he's an accomplished coach, he knows what he's doing, but I don't think he necessarily thinks it has to be fun to watch. I don't think he really cares about me sitting here watching the games and wondering if Darren is having a good time watching his team play. He wants them to win. And winning the Stanley Cup is great, but if you do a lot of winning and don't win the Stanley Cup and your team is boring to watch, it's not really, a real big win for the fans, because I don't know about you, Stu, but I'm here for the entertainment. And if you're an Oilers fan, you really get that entertainment when you watch Connor McDavid get 1,000 points in 4 games. If you're a Flames fan, your highest scoring player is Elias Lindholm, and he has less than half of the points that McDavid does. And I'm not slamming Lindholm here, because he's a very useful player and he's very good, but he's not exactly like the most invigorating player to watch as a fan. So I'm kind of wondering just what happens in the offseason. I really hope the Flames don't change their draft strategy to suit Daryl Sutter. I hope they don't change their finding players strategy to suit him, because the Flames actually draft pretty well, considering, how many picks they get and where they get them. They generally trade picks away to get players in, and they don't have that many, but they have drafted really well, and they draft for high skill and high upside and, hopes of getting a good player. That's why they get players like Andrew Mangiapane and Johnny Gaudreau, smaller guys who other teams didn't necessarily want to take as high as the Flames, who have worked out really well, and they've continued to do that. But I hope they don't switch that strategy for the sake of playing Sutter hockey, in air quotes, because we've seen that kind of drafting on the Flames, and it's turned out with players like Keegan Kanzig and Hunter Smith and Greg Nemes. And if you don't recognize those names, well, obviously you don't, because they never played any NHL games. I think Greg Nemes maybe played 2, but they were all picked because they're big. That was it. They were big people, and it was essentially a waste of picks from the Flames, and it was to suit a Daryl Sutter or a Brian Burke style of playing hockey, and it just never worked out. So I'm kind of nervous going into the offseason. I know a lot of fans are excited because they're thinking, oh, yeah, it's time for big changes. We're trading this player and we're trading that player, and we're going to get all this great stuff back. And maybe it'll be a rebuild and whatever. And I get that that's exciting, because trades are fun and change is fun to a degree. But I'm kind of worried about what form this change will take, because if it is a change to fully embrace Sutter hockey, I'm not necessarily on board with that, because I personally really loved watching games where Johnny Gaudreau was unleashed. There was a few years there, 3 or 4 years, where, again, he was worth the price of admission. You went to watch him dangle around people and score crazy goals and make crazy passes and set up people. And I want to get back to that. I don't want to watch 2-1 games like we've seen down the stretch here, where the Flames have to score 3 goals to win. If they only score 2, they lose. It's just awful to watch. And this offseason for me is going to be very interesting. I would much rather have playoffs, but that's not going to happen. And I am kind of waiting on edge to see what happens with this Flames team. Is it going to be the blessing of Daryl Sutter guiding this team to many wins and a new style of play, or is it going to be the curse of Daryl Sutter building a big lumbering team that isn't fun to watch? And I don't know. I'm hoping that the best case scenario happens to, but I'm not sure that it will.
Fair enough. That's not a good position to be in, because either the team completely blows up and gets turned into something that you don't want to be seeing, or not enough happens and it just continues to be not going anywhere. So neither are great scenarios, really.
No, and we're, as a Flames fan, I'm used to this mediocrity. I'm not an old Flames fan, so I wasn't here for all of the 90 seasons that were probably a lot like this, but it's been happening for a long time. And, the Flames are playing poorly this year, but they're not playing poorly enough to get a really high draft pick. They'll probably end up with a middling one. They don't have enough assets to trade out to bring back, big assets. So my fear is that it's going to be another middling year for the Flames, and they have to find a way to break out of it. If it's tanking, so be it. But that's just not an attitude that Calgary's owners and management have ever seemed to embrace. So unless they get really lucky or make some extremely savvy moves, I don't see them going up anytime soon, and that is very concerning. But there is one team that has been going up recently. Obviously, it's not the Flames, but the Oilers have actually clinched a playoff spot. I'm sounding very excited about this, but it's very fake. But Stu, I'm sure you're excited about it. So can you give us some insight on the Oilers past month?
Yeah, so as Darren said, the Oilers have clinched their playoff spot for the year. So neat, right?
Neat. Wow.
This is obviously very exciting. As Oilers fans, don't get a whole ton of playoff hockey to cheer for over the past many years. So we're all very much looking forward to it. It's pretty likely that they will be staying in second place of the division. So, because they're not going to be catching the Leafs, and it seems like they're not going to be dropping to third. So it's just a matter of whether Montreal or Winnipeg will pull ahead to that third place spot. Depending, or the Flames, that miraculous situation that we already discussed.
We're coming for it.
But neither of those two matchups are going to be easy ones by any stretch. Personally, they're both preferred over Toronto right now, so I'm glad we're in the position we're in. But again, neither of those are going to be easy, so I really hope the Oilers don't sort of start to slow down, think, okay, we've got that, we can take it easy now for the next few games, and then kind of get blindsided when they jump into the playoffs. Similar to what happened last year when we weren't even in the playoffs yet and we got blindsided by what was supposed to be a very poor performing Chicago Blackhawks in the preliminary rounds, I believe is what they were called. I've forgotten now. It's so long ago. Play in, right? I was going to say playoffs, but they're not playoffs. They were play-ins to the playoffs. That's right. Anyways, that's definitely not what we want to see this year. So hopefully they'll continue to kind of work strong for the remainder of these regular season games, even though they technically aren't really going to make a difference. But that'll give them, good momentum going into the playoffs as opposed to the alternative. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about the Oilers this year, which has been different from those many past years, is that the Oilers are not giving up like they used to. It seemed to be, and it's been slowly getting better. Like, 5-6 years ago, however far back you want to go, if the Oilers went down like 1-0, 15 minutes into the game, they'd be done. It would just be like, screw it. Like, I'm taking my ball and going home, basically. Like, it was really, really, really bad. It's been getting better and better and better. But this year in particular, like, the Oilers, and maybe it's just safer to say Draisaitl and McDavid, have been working really hard on those comebacks. But as much of that is a joke, and those two are putting in like huge minutes in the third period when the Oilers are down. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but definitely they're putting in a lot of time when they're down by a goal or two to try and make that comeback. But that sends a strong message to the rest of the team. And I can see the attitude of the rest of the team is not one of a defeated team that can't win this game. It's one that, okay, they're trying hard. So if they're trying hard, I have to try hard too. So I have really liked seeing that, as much as obviously you never want to see your team down. I do like seeing the effort that I've been seeing out of the Oilers when they are down. Two games in particular against Montreal in April on the 19th and 21st. They're behind in both those games, which obviously, again, is not good, but they made very strong comebacks. And in the second game, which the Oilers didn't end up winning, but they were trying very hard to come back. They were down by quite a few goals. They made it, within one. As they're trying to finish that comeback, McDavid tears into the zone, but holds and sets up. And this is like less than a minute left in the game. It feels like this is the time to rush. But, the net is empty. They need more than one chance. Unless he sees a guaranteed goal, he's still willing to slow down and play it smart. And this is exactly what we were talking about a couple episodes ago. And that's exactly how one of the best players in the game gets even better. He knows that even though any other person, and definitely all the fans, were probably yelling from their comfort of their own home, because it's not in the arena, thank goodness, but they were probably yelling like, why aren't you just running that goalie and taking that chance? Of all times in the game, that seems to be the time to rush things, but he slowed it down. He played it smart. Yeah, like I said, they didn't end up making that comeback and winning that game. But I saw really smart play there. And again, that's very impressive from an already very impressive player. Speaking of very impressiveness from Connor McDavid, I feel like this is like almost every episode an update on the current pace of which this monster is playing hockey. He is very close to a pace of 150 points over an 82 game season. I think he's at like 149 and a half or something like that. So that's just absolutely ridiculous. That would be the highest total in a full season since Mario Lemieux's 161 points in 92-93. So that's just stuff that doesn't happen anymore. Now, obviously, this isn't a full season, so maybe over 82 games, Connor McDavid would slow down. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it at this point in time. It looks like he's like, I'm pretty sure the last time we talked about this, we're like, wow, he's on pace for 120 or 130 points. So he's not exactly slowing down these days. So who knows what would happen in the 82 game season, but that's besides the point. It's a monstrous performance from him, and obviously we love to see that, and hopefully that picks up and continues into the playoffs as well, and continues into what is, we're hoping, I think, will be a full season next year. I don't know, fingers crossed, I guess. But one other player I wanted to quickly talk about is Puljujarvi, and I've talked about him at least once this year, if not a couple times, because 2 years ago, he was really looking like the complete bust of the 2016 draft. But so far this year, he's actually outscored the other early draft picks from that year, save for Austin Matthews, obviously, who's sort of in a realm of his own. But, this includes Laine, Dubois, Tkachuk. He hasn't exactly blown any of these guys out of the water, but he wouldn't have even been in a conversation with those names a year or two ago. Now, one could very well argue, and rightly so, that none of these guys are having the best years of their lives. But hey, I'm an optimist, so if we can knock those guys down a few pegs and our guy is in the conversation, we'll take it. But honestly, really, even though those guys are having not great seasons, Puljujarvi is having definitely his best season, and he's getting better and better as he goes as well. And one thing that's particularly noticeable about him is he seems to really love what he's doing and playing as an Oiler, which is the exact opposite of what we were talking about a few years back when he last played. So that I really like to see, and I can't wait to see him get even better and better as time goes on. And the fact that he enjoys being an Oiler is just icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, and going back to your point at the very beginning, I didn't feel like interrupting, so I will just stick it in now about the Oilers not giving up as often anymore or at all anymore. I was so shocked to see when the Flames were beating them the other night on the game that definitely didn't happen, but the Flames did win 3-1. The Oilers were only down by 1 goal in the third period, and it's basically a meaningless game because the Flames, they still had a chance to get in the playoffs, but not really. And the Oilers hadn't clinched yet, but they basically had. But they were down by 1, and I was so shocked to see McDavid and Draisaitl being rolled out there on the same line constantly to try to get that tying goal in a game that didn't really matter much. And I was like, oh wow, like this matters to them, and they're really trying to tie it. And I'm scared, obviously, because it was shocking that they didn't get any points that night. But I think that really speaks to what you were talking about, that they don't really have that culture of giving up anymore. It's, we've got these 2 crazy star players, we're never out of it. Now it is time for Sellies and Scorns. I'm actually just going to go first, and I'm just going to roll with both of mine, if that's okay, because they're just on the same topic. So do you mind, Stu? Do you mind just taking a back seat for a second here?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go get a drink. You fill me in later.
Perfect. You can listen to the edit later and tell me if I missed anything. So my Selly is for Patrick Marleau, because if you'll remember a couple of weeks ago, Patrick Marleau became the NHL's leading games played player. So he's played the most games in the National Hockey League. Just for the record, he has, literally for the record, he has played in 1,775 career regular season games and counting, which passed Gordie Howe, who was the previous record holder. And in case you're thinking, oh, well, maybe he's not actually that good, he just plays lots of games, that would be a ridiculous thing to say, obviously, because he has 1,197 career points. He's 41 years old, and he's still a very, very quick player, which I think is somehow the most mind-blowing part of this for me. I'm going to bring up more numbers, but the fact that he's 41 years old and still considered a fast hockey player is just incredibly impressive to me. He's played 24 NHL seasons. That's a lot. He's played 21 of those seasons with San Jose. He was actually drafted 2nd overall in 1997. I wasn't aware of that he was drafted 2nd overall. I would say that's a pretty good pick. If your player that you pick 2nd overall is is the leading NHL games played player, that's quite impressive. 1st overall, of course, was Joe Thornton. Somewhat, I'm not going to say ironically, because I don't think that's what that word means, but interestingly. And I was digging into the stats a little bit more to try to sound a little bit smarter this afternoon. And this also was very impressive to me. He never missed more than 8 games in a season. And the time that he did miss 8 games in a season was his rookie year. So he probably was sat out for, he had a bad case of being a rookie or something like that. But he played the full number of regular season games in 13 seasons. And besides that, he never missed more than 8 games in a regular season. That's crazy to me that he has that kind of longevity, that kind of ability to avoid injury. Obviously, he'd take care of himself really well if he never missed hardly any games. And he's 41 years old and still very fast. Like, that speaks to his dedication, how seriously he takes this. He's got a lot of points, so he's a talented player. And for a final number to hit you with, I saw this tweeted out, and this absolutely exploded my brain. Are you ready for this stat, Stu? I'm not sure if you've seen it, but
I guess I'm ready.
Patrick Marleau has played with or against 37% of all players in the history of the NHL.
Holy cow.
Yeah, the NHL is over 100 years old. Patrick Marleau has played with or against 37% of all players that have ever played in the NHL.
Wow.
Like, his career's gone on a long time, and obviously I think part of that is due to teams like going through players faster and, you know, short careers, and Patrick Marleau played a game against someone that's only played one game ever and stuff like that. But that's still just an absolutely ridiculous number for me. And so obviously, to cap off this silly, congratulations to Patrick Marleau. That's an insane record. I think that was one of those records that people said would never be beaten, that Gordie Howe had that one on lockdown. And here we are. Patrick Marleau said, nope, I got it. And and in a modern era, we've seen a nearly unbreakable record get broken, which is very cool. And I'll go straight into my scorn because it also has to do with Patrick Marleau. The reaction to Patrick Marleau getting that record, for the most part, was very positive. Obviously, a beloved player in the NHL broke a record that was nearly unbreakable. Very cool. We're witnessing history. It's very exciting. It's really neat. Patrick Marleau's allegedly a very nice guy. He's from Aneroid, Saskatchewan, which is a town I've passed on the highway. You couldn't be happier for the guy. Well, some journalist hacks decided that they had to take the opposite stance to, I don't know, make their career stand out or something. One of them is well-known Toronto columnist Steve Simmons, who lots of people dislike a little bit, and you'll see why with this tweet. Steve Simmons says, "In my mind, Marleau was done 2 years ago. He's hung on through the help of the Sharks to get the record. I admire his career. I don't admire how he got to the end. And a lot of people under the age of 60 never saw Howe play. So I want to show the other side of this." So he thinks it matters that Patrick Marleau isn't like a superstar stud in those last few years. He thinks that the Sharks and Marleau have some sort of conspiracy to get him the record. Even if all of that is true, does it really matter? Like, Patrick Marleau's still a contributing player. Sure, he only has 9 points this year, but I mean, we always make excuses for, oh, this guy's a great veteran leader and X factor and all that. You think Patrick Marleau doesn't have that? You think he's not a great leader or someone? He obviously has a little bit of experience in the league. I'm sure he's great with younger players, and he probably has a lot to offer the San Jose Sharks. So that's a ridiculous take, and it says a lot of people under the age of 60 never saw Howe play. Yeah, of course we didn't, unless we've seen highlights. What does that have to do with anything? I can still respect the career of Gordie Howe without ever having gotten to watch him live. I don't understand being mad for the sake of I don't know, protecting Gordie Howe's legacy, because he's obviously cemented his own incredible legacy in the NHL. And there was another tweet from Rosie DiMano, another columnist, who wrote, "Milt Dunnell wrote 11,000 columns for The Star," which is allegedly the publication she works for. "I'll never catch him. But if I were to reach 10,999, I'd stop. There's much to admire about Patrick Marleau as a hockey player and a human being. Not this. Respect." So what she's saying is that Patrick Marleau should have stopped one game shy of the record out of respect for Gordie Howe.
Wow.
That's not how records work. Records, like rules, are meant to be broken. What's the point of sports if all records are now the ceiling as of today, and you're not allowed to break them? You're just not allowed out of respect. If Alex Ovechkin gets close to Gretzky, you got to stop. If Connor McDavid starts putting together an even more spectacular career and starts reaching those heights, you got to stop out of respect. You can't break those ceilings. And I I think that's completely ridiculous. She's basically saying that you're not allowed to improve upon what we've done in the past. You know, if she's a columnist that wrote 11,001 columns, that's abhorrent. She never should have done that. Like, that's also another weird take. So my scorn is for the people that for some reason can't be happy for Patrick Marleau and his record breaking. That's ridiculous. Records are meant to be broken. He did it with as much class as you possibly can. And like, there was no wrongdoing or foul and Patrick Marleau breaking a record. Congrats to him. And some people need to give their heads a little bit of a shake when it comes to trying to cook up a hot take to get some views on their work, I think.
Yeah, like Usain Bolt, do you mind slowing down so that Asafa Powell can maintain the record? Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. Baseball breaks a record every 4 seconds because they make up so many of them. Can you imagine how boring it would be if they weren't allowed to do that anymore?
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Well, so yeah, for you having the double whammy, I guess I'll go with both of mine now.
Yeah, I don't got anything to follow up with, so it's all you.
So I guess I'll do my Selly first. My Selly is for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And really, this is a veiled scorn of the New Jersey Devils, but I had another scorn. So this is a Selly for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So in NHL history, teams that were outscored by their opponent by 5+ goals in the third period have never won in 270 instances of that happening. And that is until the New Jersey Devils got their hands on that stat on April 20th. They were down 6-0 against Pittsburgh going into the third. So pretty bad game so far, right? But like the Oilers, apparently, they did not give up. They were not discouraged by a 6-0 deficit. They scored 6 goals in the final frame. But they still lost the game 7-6. So, yes, that's really just a scorn on the New Jersey Devils. But the Penguins did something that 270 other teams could not. So I guess that's pretty impressive.
Out of respect, the Penguins should have let the Devils win, I think.
Out of respect.
Yeah, respect the record.
Honestly, that could also just be a scorn to the Pittsburgh Penguins for letting the Devils score 6 goals in the third period. But hey, they held on and won that game. So I guess we'll call that a Selly, but it's really a scorn on all parties involved there. But my real scorn, so back in March, my Selly was that the NHL was going back to ESPN because I said it belonged on a sports network. Well, the ESPN got, the majority of the NHL games for the US deal, but there was still a few games left, and we were sort of all wondering what the mystery was, is who was going to get the remainder of these games. Well, recently, the remainder of the games not going to be on ESPN were awarded to TNT, which, while it does have sports, is not a sports network. And it kind of showed in this instance. There was a promotional image that was used during the NBA on TNT postgame show that had an image of Alexander Ovechkin. Okay, makes sense.
Good
and
choice.
Legendary Oilers captain Andrew Ference.
The face of the NHL.
Yeah, who has played on probably half a dozen teams, but has never, ever been the face of the NHL. Hasn't played since, I think, 2015.
Yeah, how long ago was the captain of the Oilers? Like, how long was that picture from?
That was back then. Would have been about 2015, I think, was that picture. So, yeah.
They're really putting in 110% over there at TNT, aren't they?
Yeah, so some intern Googled Oilers captain, and like this sounds like a joke, but this is literally what happened. And if you Google Oilers captain right now and look at Google Images, the image of Ference has actually moved from third to second because so many people are looking into this and thinking, what the heck? Because the first image is of Connor McDavid, but he doesn't have the captaincy on his jersey because it's from when it was like announced. Also, he's not like playing; he's just standing there. But the next image is of Andrew Ference in a actionable hockey pose with the C on his chest. So that's the one they picked.
I gotta know what knowledge base this intern has. If they knew enough to know that you need the C on your jersey to be a captain, knew enough to type in Oilers captain, but didn't know that Connor McDavid is like the best player in the NHL, and that's who they were looking for.
Yeah, that's true too. Like, why were they looking specifically for the Oilers captain, but like we're drawing a blank on who that guy was that they know is that, good of a guy? Yeah.
Was their boss like, we need a picture? Hey, get that picture of the Oilers captain. I don't remember his name. And the intern's like, yes, sir, right away, sir. I get on it.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, we don't actually know who found this, whether it was an intern, could have been the CEO of the company and just blamed an intern. Who knows? But anyways, it's pretty funny. And the image was actually coming up in the midst of Shaq being quizzed on his NHL knowledge.
Oh no, I didn't get to see this. Was it as amazing as I assume it is?
It was as expectedly entertaining. So, no one expects Shaq to have a ton of NHL knowledge. So that was entertaining, good laughs. But this particular promo image that got thrown up, Shaq did not put that promo image together. So we can't blame him for that.
That you know of.
I guess he might have, but anyways, I guess let's just hope that TNT gets a little bit staffed up in their hockey knowledge department, and we'll see. I have high hopes for it, but anyway, that was pretty funny and a little embarrassing on their part, I'm sure.
That's it for the episode, everyone. As you may have noticed, no predictions because the Oilers only play a few games until the playoffs, and the Flames do play 6, but let's be real, none of them really matter. So we won't be doing any predictions this episode, but I'm sure that next episode we will have an excellent playoff warm-up for you to listen to, where we will have to predict a lot of series that we have no idea of anything about because they're American teams that we haven't watched a single second of this season. So get ready for that. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure to rate, like, and subscribe to the podcast to get us a few more listens. And we'll be back in a couple weeks with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.